Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thanks for coming to the show. On today's show, we're talking about AGI, but maybe not just the typical conversation that you've seen floating around. The real question is, are parts of AGI already here today? Now, maybe we won't think about that as globally, but in this conversation today, we're going to talk about individual experiences. What does AGI mean to you personally? And does that matter more than some global shape-shifting, moving definition of AGI that seems to get redefined 5, 6, 7 times a year by even the top folks in the industry? Maybe there's a good reason for that. Maybe it doesn't matter. That's what we're going to be talking about on the show today. Our own experiences, how we feel like AGI perhaps is part of our lives today. And maybe we just weren't paying attention. And maybe even how it's part of your lives and you haven't thought about it. So this is the Daily AI Show. Today is August 21st, 2025. I am joined by Beth and Andy. I'm Brian. Guys, welcome to the show. We'll see if anybody else pops in, but I'm excited to have this show. This is less about here are the hard facts. Here's the statistical data. Here's the KPI. That's not this show today. Today is about your feels, right? Today is about how people by the way, thank you for everybody who's joined us in the comments already and leaving comments live. If you guys want to share your experiences and how you feel like you're starting to get pieces and parts of AGI, we would love for you to throw those in the chat and we'll bring those into the conversation. Because like I said, today is just about, there is no right or wrong. I mean, you guys know I do the conundrum episodes that go out on Saturdays. And the whole point of a conundrum episode is not to stick a finger and say, this is exactly the right way and this is the wrong way. It's always, always, always about where are we going with AI? And where are all the weird, sticky places we're going to find ourselves? I don't mean that in a gross way. I just mean that in a way of like, it's going to be weird. We sort of talked about it yesterday. I even hinted about it. And because we were talking about, does it matter if you kick a robot dog? What if it pants? What if it's got fur? What if it begs? What if it appears to eat some food? What if it's a lap dog? What if it's really, really cute, right? Like you can keep going down this list and list and list. And then I said and what if you have rage rooms in the future? That's a weird place to be. Let's unpack that for a second. And what does that mean if people have rage rooms in the future that have AI animals that are meant to be beaten? How do we feel about that? Is that something we want to deal with? Beth's like, no, I don't want to deal. I can see it on your face, Beth. You're like, no, that bothers me. And I think it would be valid to say that that's the case, right? But it's also, in your answer yesterday, Beth, was not to put words in your mouth. Your answer yesterday on that part, and this isn't even at the whole conversation today, but just as it flows into this, right? Your part is it says more about the person and why would you want to do that, right? It's about why would you have those instincts in the first place? That's what's important, not the fact that it's alive or not alive or has conscious or not. Other people would say it's a microwave, Beth, and if I punch my microwave, who cares? If I throw my printer out into the yard, who cares? If I just have rage about it. So it's right? It's this weird, sticky place. I know do you want to respond to that? Because I don't want to put words in your mouth.
So yes. And the question, I think there becomes a question about what are we practicing as people in society? Right. I don't feel the same kind of risk if you are practicing the behavior of throwing your printer in your yard every time you're upset. I'm not happy about it, but I don't feel endangered by that.
Right.
If you've spent money to go privately beat a thing that looks like a live something, because you feel rage, I have a societal question about what you're practicing, right?
100%. And I think you're right to say that. By the way, I'm not pro kick a dog or, you know what I mean? Robot dog, AI dog, not a real dog. Obviously, I'm not pro that. To be clear, before anybody comes after me. No, I think the point is valid, Beth. And what I'm trying to say is this, you're right. You're right to say if your brain doesn't know the difference and it just knows it's projecting violence on something, regardless if it's real, does your brain and memories really track the right or wrong versus a printer, which is just a printer, and it'll always be a printer, and your brain can probably work with that, right? And so these are all the sticky areas. Well, the reason I bring that up first, because we talked about it this week, is it's interesting. It feels maybe we don't want to sometimes have these conversations because it's not I'd prefer not to have to deal with that future. I also know there's a lot of real AI stuff in it. And when it comes to AGI, that's just about, for anybody that doesn't know, that's artificial general intelligence. There's another higher level order there. It's called artificial super intelligence. And sometimes you've seen some of the top minds or whatever seemingly skip over AGI and go to ASI. We know that Meta has developed and put together. Mark Zuckerberg has personally curated his super intelligence team. We have other people who have started companies with the term super intelligence into it, who are the forefront of our industry right now with AI. But here's where my brain is, and here's where I would love to just get your guys' thoughts. Again, this is a feeling show. It's not about facts. It's about how do you feel about this? Here's how I feel about this as a general overview. And I wrote a LinkedIn post about this on Saturday, which is what gave me the idea to do this show. I was sitting there on Saturday morning and I had three things going on. I was busy and I didn't get to like the conundrum episode as fast as I wanted to. Typically, like it's a Thursday, I'd like to pretty much have a conundrum episode done by Thursday night. But last weekend, there I was at 7 a.m. in the morning and I did not have it. And it goes live typically at 10 a.m. Now, nobody's holding my feet to the fire on that, but that's when I put it out. So that's when I wanted to have it done. The newsletter goes out on Sunday mornings at 8 a.m. and I had not started the newsletter either. And I also had a third project that I was working on as well. So what I noticed as I was sitting at my computer is, because of AI, maybe because of a bit of AGI, I no longer think linearly about projects that need to get done. I think about what can AI take off my plate, and then how should I reorder and reorganize my tasks in the best organization to get all this done, knowing that some of this stuff I no longer have to sit at the computer and manually do. So for instance, I was able to do deep research on a particular topic for the conundrum, but I left my computer and I took care of the dishes because they drive me nuts in the kitchen. And so that's what I was doing Saturday morning. And then I waltzed my way back into the computer and I was like, yeah, that's about where I thought this would be. Here's a little change to it or whatever. Oh, you know what? I need to do this, this, and this for the newsletter. I set up my automations of what I needed to do. And once again, I left the computer and then I came back. And in some cases, I minimized my screen and I worked on something completely different that had nothing to do with that project or the conundrum or the newsletter or anything Daily AI show. And then I was like, oh, right. Yeah, we're back. Let me see where we are. And so over the course of 3 hours on Saturday morning, I completely checked off stuff like the conundrum. I had made major progress on the newsletter. I had also done dishes and started laundry and typical Saturday morning stuff in this house before my wife and daughter were up. And all of that seemed totally fine. I never felt like I was like scatterbrained. I never felt like I was trying to work on too many things at once or I had too many plates spinning at once. I felt pretty at ease with it that AI was sitting virtually alongside me and handling these projects really as if I had had somebody else in the room with me who just had also gotten up at 7 a.m. and was sitting at a different computer also doing this work. And so I had this thought. I said, well, I don't know. I mean, isn't that AGI in a way for me? Isn't that in a sense some sort of artificial general intelligence that's now supplanting things that I had to do? It's now making a direct impact on my life? Or no, is it not? Because AGI is this thing and we'll know when we get there and there'll be some sort of like, agreement sort of collectively, and there'll be a poll or something. And we'll say, no, we've met it now because it's supposed to be general intelligence. And it's not really about Brian's needs. It's about the needs, generally speaking, of the human population. And that doesn't qualify. And I'm okay with either or, but I'm just curious, like where your guys' thoughts are. What have you felt like has been maybe a shift in the last 6 months, 3 months in the way you work and organize your life? And have you felt yourself maybe quietly slipping into some of these new ways of working and living that just simply weren't part of our lives, obviously, a year ago and more, Thoughts? Who wants to jump in on that?
I will. So I've felt that artificial general intelligence has been around for a while now. And part of it is informed by the same kind of reliance I've developed on AI systems, not just a single one, but AI systems to do things that a generally intelligent and reasonably smart and experienced human would be able to do for me. And so I feel like the premise of your show today, Brian, is correct. That if we relax somewhat the strict requirements that some of the most advanced thinkers are applying to the question of whether AGI is attained or not. And we go back to something as simple as the Turing test, was that if you can, interact with a machine, and a human doing that remotely through a teletype or text exchange can't distinguish between whether it's a human or a machine, well, that's artificial intelligence. We've way gone past that.
Yeah.
Right now, I think a more strict test, but one that is already passing grade, in my opinion, in AI is, okay, if I just took a random sample of humans and I got a panel of 10 average intelligence humans, and as a panel, they have average intelligence. There's a smart one in there, and there's one that's not so bright, and I have those as resource to myself. How long would it take me to inform that group and have them understand what I want to do, and then act on that collectively as a group? Then bring that example down to just one. Let's just say we have one person that I'm calling upon to do that. Would they have the range of knowledge and experience that the AI assistants that I turn to currently have? No, they don't have the breadth. They don't have the multifunctional capabilities that AI does. And so I look at the AI assistants as superior to what it is that I would get if I took a typical human, who I don't think we would dispute has general intelligence, because now they have a broad enough experience base and a broad enough understanding and reasoning capability that they can execute a wide range of skills beyond the capacity of any typical individual human being. So that's that for me. And I just want to comment finally on, I think we confuse ourselves when we worry about whether AI is correctly or badly simulating human emotional misbehavior, right? So if there's a human kicking a dog, we understand that as misbehavior, but we don't say, oh, that person doesn't have general intelligence. They just have bad training, or they have a trauma that's disrupting their otherwise intelligent, rational understanding that this is a sentient being and I shouldn't kick it. But that doesn't change the fact that we expect and impose some certain expectation on that human because they are intelligent. Now, there are cases where there are mental deficiencies, and we can understand and excuse a human that has mental deficiencies, whether from brain trauma or just some defect in their growth patterns or whatever. And we would not consign them to the kinds of punishments that we would normally ascribe for someone who's being abusive to other sentient beings. But if we're talking just about general intelligence, there's a lot of bad behavior and poor execution on the part of humans that doesn't cause them to be failing on the AGI test.
That's a good point. I mean, and to be clear, I probably made a bit of a leap there because I jumped into yesterday's conversation in order to set up this one. And to be fair, I think you're right, Andy. There's not as clear. I think where my brain obviously was going with it was more of the weirdness that kind of comes through with AI and this future, and that's why I mentioned the conundrums, like this future sort of state where things just aren't black and white. If anything, they're just more and more and more gray.
Yeah. And that's perfectly relevant to the discussion that we had yesterday, which is, are people anthropomorphizing AI and AI embodied particularly? And what are the problems that arise when we have that tendency to assign human-like qualities to something that is simulating them very, very effectively?
Yeah.
But that, this is really interesting because it gets to the place, I think, where there is an interesting tension that is inviting us to examine how we talk about humans, how we experience humans. right? Because there is an assumption that humans have humanity and don't need to earn it, right? And that does not include apparently empathy, ability to do certain levels of problems, being a good partner, always being truthful about factual content, right? Like those kinds of things that we are actually looking at. How what do we consider general intelligence in this way? What do we consider in support of to the benefit of all humanity? We don't even consider that for humans. Like, you're allowed to be human and intelligent and do nothing to do complete like badness, not to the not benefit of all humanity, right? And as we start to look at these situations and we're trying to define what is considered like a human level of intelligence, and it's coming from something that is structured very differently, it's just predictive, right? It's pattern. Now we're looking at what are the human patterns, because we keep coming back to this place of, yeah, no, it's behaving that way because it's been patterned on us. If there are things that we look at and say, wow, that's not great, that's the mirror. And I feel like we get to this place of artificial general intelligence, artificial super intelligence. Can it replace a human in tasks? When we're just looking at behavior and inferring intent. And I think that's an interesting question, but we avoid that a lot of the time with humans. We make assumptions. Like Andy said, well, maybe there's a traumatic thing, or there's some reason that the human is behaving what I would say aberrantly with another life form. But it's a bigger question, and I feel like the artificial general intelligence question that we engage in comes down to, can it make me human money? Right? Is it valid? Is it valuable? Is it worth the time to put in because there's an economic benefit from that? And that is, I think, one of the ways that business is looking at it, which is why it comes up.
I can only say for me, it's not money, although that part's that goes into it. It's time. Can it pay me in time? Time back, right? Now, I may choose to refill those extra open time slots of my life with more stuff. And somebody could accurately look at me and go, Brian, you do more now than ever. That's what you got out of AI, was you're busier than ever. If somebody pointed a finger at me and said, like, that's how I see this, prove me wrong, I'd say, well, I mean, you're right. I've become increasingly more efficient in my work, increasingly more efficient in life. And as a choice, I haven't decided to sit and longfully look at the beach in that extra hour. Certainly a choice. I didn't have that hour, and now I only live 20 minutes from the beach. I think I'll just go sit on the beach and look at the ocean. I think it's the best thing for me right now. Or I'll go spend that extra hour with my daughter or my wife or whatever. And I'm not saying those things don't happen, but I do choose usually to fill those voids and be like, well, if I was able to do it in 4 hours, which I was able to do in 5, well, what other kind of efficiencies kind of get out of that fifth hour, whether it be work or whatever. I actually enjoy that part of it, but I think it's a fair assessment. So I guess my answer back to that, Beth, is like, yes, you're right. I mean, it's like, can it make businesses more money faster? Can it do it with less humans, meaning less overtime, no insurance, right? These are huge costs. Just OJI for businesses, on the job injury, for people who don't know that, for businesses like when I was a firefighter, or when I used to work at Delta, or 1,000 other manual labor type jobs where OJI is a real part of that. And businesses work very hard to minimize those costs and downtimes and people literally getting hurt, obviously. That all unless there's robots involved, in the Amazon workplace, and it knocks over a stack of stuff and it injures a human, more than likely we could probably assume that like the robot might do something dumb, but that just only the robot got hurt. There's no OGI there. Just that piece of machinery is now down, and there's a cost associated with that. For me, I think going forward, as I look at like what is AGI, how does it impact my life? For me, it's going to be about what time does it give back to me, and then giving me more options on how I want to spend that time, however that is, divvy it up. And I think that's a personal choice. Obviously, I don't think there's any right or wrong answers to that either. Jimmy, Carl, you guys are both with us. Would love to get your thoughts. If you didn't catch me at the beginning of the show, I said, I kind of see this show and this discussion as more of like a feels discussion. So there's really we can pull in Sam Altman comments. There are other comments here to pull in, but I think more for me, this was about like, hey, this is how I feel on Saturday morning as I was doing these things. I wonder if other people feel this way too. And that's kind of what the gist of today's show was for me. So I'm just curious to hear from both of y'all, like, how do you feel about where you are with AI? Do you find yourself, stepping away more or being able to accomplish more where you weren't having to be completely either mentally or physically present for the task to happen? You either literally walked away or you mentally shifted away from whatever was going on, and it was happening now away from you without your focus. So how are you seeing that today? And do you personally, but for both of y'all, as you get into it, do you think that has anything to do with AGI, or is AGI this thing? This is also this other thing that's going on, and none, they do not connect. And I think there's some validity to that as well.
Yeah. I think the way I look at this is, well, here's a story actually. I was talking about after the show yesterday, or maybe it was the day before, but I take it as a little win when I propose a question or a prompt to a reasoning model. So like, let's say GPT-5 thinking, and it takes minutes for it to answer my question. I feel like I have asked it a question complex enough for it to actually spend time, because sometimes I'll ask questions and it'll do it in like 12 seconds or 36 seconds. And I'm just like, oh, I didn't use this right. I have to relook at it. So when it's over 5 minutes or 7 minutes, I'm like, yes, I did. I accomplished a complex enough goal. But that kind of leads towards the walking away bit. It definitely does change the behavior, because I can go check up on things. It's still not enough time for me to like literally change my focus on a completely other topic or subject. I tend to handle things linearly, or serially, really. So when I want to solve a problem, it's like, okay, we're solving this problem, and that's what I'm working on. Refocusing or retasking, it's like slowing down from going 90 miles an hour. It's like, okay, I got to slow down. All right, now I'm turning the corner, and then now I got to speed up again, right? So there's always that shift time. And so I see that as just the way that I work. So having those few more minutes to just, oh, let me check that email, or, oh, hey, something else is running, monitoring and, curating all of the tests that are going on at the same time around whatever, overall thing that I'm working on is helpful. And what I hope to do is get more and more systems in place that do more and more. And I think you laid out early on, the kinds of things like in your, in your post, the things that AI can handle for you. Now, in terms of AGI, I don't think that has anything to do with AGI. I think that has more to do with automation and reasoning and crunching of doing little tasks. I think AGI as just a marker of intelligence, its capability, is something that we have to look at slightly differently. And what I'd like to to frame it is what I think the average person thinks of when they hear AGI. There's been so much hype, so much things have been conflated, so much, the balloon has been blown up to what AGI could be. There's still some discrepancies in how people will define it. And because there's also billion-dollar deals connected to, the official stamp of what AGI is, we may never get that from our perspective, whether or not it's whatever the real benchmark is. And so I based it on what the masses might think AGI is. Imagine what experience they have with AI, what kinds of imaginings. And so I kind of broke it down into a couple of different things. And this is broad strokes, but I think people will accept something as AGI when, one, it's personalized. They have a relationship with it. We are humans. We are social creatures. We like to have those connections. That's why we anthropomorphize everything, is because we want to feel connected to it. That's how we communicate. And through that, you need a ubiquitous, multimodal UI, user interface, user experience. They just need to be able to interact with the AI easily and in whatever they want to, however they want to, right? It needs to be an invisible UX, right? User experience, meaning it's not, I have to open a browser, then I go to this website, and then I activate my AI. No, it's got to be, hey, Bob. Yeah, Jimmy. What are you, what are we working on today? Oh, okay, Bob. Well, I have a couple of things, that helpful assistant kind of thing, right? And then some of the technical things, it needs that permanence, it needs that long-term memory. And that needs to be used with like reinforcement learning or some other mechanism so that it adapts and grows with you and your experiences. So it understands you, so it can give you better feedback, right? That kind of experience, that kind of interaction, that's what people will see as AGI. Now, they may mix it up with like sentience, but that doesn't necessarily need to be part of it. But maybe the average user imagines some level of sentience or that feeling or experience of it. But having it ubiquitous, always available, it's never hard to get in touch with it. It contacts you. And then the big thing is agency. I think that's the big thing for most people. If an AI is easy to communicate with and it does what you want, especially if it can go do it by itself with little instruction and little monitoring, that's going to be the key for most, the unlock for most people in their brains. It's like, oh, that's AGI. It did it for me, and the more I work with it, it anticipates my needs. That's even better AGI. So, and I think that's what most people they think of in general terms of what they expect from the big term AGI. Now, whether that's not necessarily accurate in what we're talking about from like in the field or within the bubble itself, but I think most people imagine something along those lines before they can declare it in their brain. Oh, that's what everybody's talking about.
More of a Jarvis, right? It's sort of wherever you need it to be, sort of an upper level.
Yeah, it should be invisible. It's all the promises they made with like Siri and Alexas and those assistances, because that's how a lot of people think of AI. Plus, everything we've seen from media, form, sci-fi, all those kinds of things, without it getting to the point where it's sentient, and we're not talking iRobot and data from Star Trek and all those kinds of things, but just something that's ubiquitous, easy, does stuff for me, and I don't have to lead it around by the nose to show it everything it has to do for me. And I think that's what most people think of.
It's well thought out. I mean, I like your definition. I appreciate you like doing the due diligence to like put that together, because it's like there's some definite steps there, I think, to what it means to you. Carl, I'd love to bring you into this conversation because we haven't heard from you yet. Thoughts on what I said earlier, back with Jimmy or anybody else is thinking about, as you sort of think about how you're using AI today, whether that has anything to do or not do with AGI.
Just a response to Jimmy, I think like if we saw the Reddit AMA threads, there are people who think 4.0 is AGI in your definition, right? They're like, that's my companion. That is, I can do stuff with it. They may not need all the stuff that you mentioned, all the technical aspects, but for them, it's there. I also think from a time perspective, if we saw everything we have today 10 years ago, I would guess a lot of people would consider what we have today AGI. Like that's, I know 10 years ago, if I had everything, I'd be like, yeah, we have artificial general intelligence according to where I was 10 years ago. I think like from a time perspective, it's always going to be a little different. For me personally, I don't really care, just because it doesn't, like, I think with what we have today, it meets all the needs and more of, just how I do things. And I also think like just because of the work we do, it's like barely anybody outside of the AI bubble uses a quarter of what is available out there of all the features and capabilities. It's not, when you talk about Beth, or Jimmy, what do normal people think? Like they don't care and they just use it as just another tool. Like, I think that's a big thing. They honestly do not care. How many people I talk to, they care because it's being told to them that's like, oh, it may take your job and stuff. But for company after company after person, they're just like, oh, I just use it. And it's sort of like not a big deal for them. It's just, oh, okay, great. And yeah, they get excited about, oh, that's the cool stuff. And mind you, we're in a setting where we're trying to show them stuff for work. And it's like, oh, that's really cool. Okay, that's cool. I'm going to go back to what I do and I'm more focused on this. Right. An example would be, just because I was looking at a new mountain bike, I was just in a bike shop, and I've been to like multiple bike shops and just talking to the folks there, like it gets to, hey, what do you do? Or so on. We tell them, and that's really cool. And that's it. And we just go back to talking about bikes. Like, oh, can it, there's some jokes here and there, but other than that, so there's so a big, I think, groups of people in the world that this is not affecting their lives, nor they don't care of it. And I know we talk about, hey, you got to get going, you got to use it. And we do from a business perspective, but I don't care. And I think that's where I was like, oh, it's big for a lot of people, but for a lot of more people, I think, in the world, it's and it's not to diminish everything, but it's just how many people like have that. That's cool. Okay. And then on top of that too, from when we talk about AGI, when you go to businesses and all the little things that they do, all the processes, everything, they don't like, it can't do it. It's just so many restrictions and limitations based on just a bunch of reasons, what businesses are in. It can't do the specific things that people want it to do without doing other things. So I have to do this compromise with this system. I have to build this workaround. I have to do this. So for people, it's like, oh, that's cool, but I have to do all this stuff. And like you said, Jimmy, I just kind of want it to do stuff. Okay. And that's where, even when I say, as anyone heard the term artificial general intelligence, a couple of people put their hand up, and, I'm using the OpenAI definition, level 5 AI that can take, can do the work of an entire organization. Like, what does that mean? Like, what does that actually look like? Can it go into a company like, I don't know, a Stantec, urban development, land development company? Can it, when I think about all the work that every single person we meet with does there? No, not even close. Like the what that thing does is like, you are so far off from what they do And that's a massive enterprise, a global enterprise. So like, what do you do? So that's what I mean. It's sort of like, does it really matter? Yes, but then no, because most people don't care. And that's the thing. That's why it's kind of how I feel. It's so weird when I get wrapped up, and then when I go out into the field, it kind of like, oh shoot, it humbles you a bit. You're like, no, this is not a priority for majority. They're like, yeah, okay, thanks, come again. And I was like, okay, see you later.
I wanted to bring in Gwen's comment just super quick here. She said, in the end, do we really care what it's called? We care about what it does. Are we caught up on its AGI or super intelligence? I think, I mean, Gwen, that's sort of where I am on this, right? I mean, I think all of us are having this conversation, but like Carl kind of said it too, like, does it matter? Does it matter? I mean, in some ways it matters because it matters for some companies for what the definition of AGI. We've talked about that with Microsoft and OpenAI and however that's figured out as part of their initial contract, if you will. But outside of that, like, I agree with what all you're saying is like, I mean, it really just depends on how it's helping me. I mean, we're all selfish at the end of the day, not in a bad way. I just mean we're all selfish. We're all looking out for number one, as we should, and then our families and things like that. But so, yeah, if I'm serving Mai Tais in a tiki hut on a beach on St. Martin, how much do I care about what we're talking about right now at all? Like, it's now, look, if I'm in business school while I'm serving Mai Tais and I have a desire to get off the beach and do bigger things in corporate, sure, I might be slinging Mai Tais today and also thinking about what do I know, where do I need to be in order to do that. But I might also just be really happy slinging Mai Tais and talking to people on the beach and seeing new, tourists every day. And that's what lights me up. And I found my happy place. And that's it, folks. I'm okay with that.
That would be great if you could live comfortably just doing that.
I'm taking that part out, obviously. Right. I'm not suggesting that is maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I know people do well with it, but
I think it just highlights why we do business, why we do get to these places, because we want to just be slinging Mai Tais on the beach instead of having to do all of this other stuff. We want to go back to what we really drives our passion, and that could just be living on the beach and slinging Mai Tais.
Right. But there's a whole category of people who also are not engaged and so don't really think about this because they're not slinging Mai Tais on the beach. They are driving DoorDash after they got done with their thing so that they could, like make rent and that kind of stuff. Sure. Like I think there are levels of this, but in when Carl was talking in terms of like, I just want it to work, I don't really care about it. I do think that what we're sort of seeing and what we're fighting against a little bit is I don't care if it's intelligent, if it's not reliable, right? And once it's reliable, we don't call it any of these other things, right? So we don't consider autocorrect artificial intelligence in the same kind of way, or those word predictions when it doesn't work, right? Like auto incorrect is absolutely a thing. But spell check, everybody uses spell check, right? Like it revolutionized having to proofread your paper. Calculators, that revolutionized having to do a ton of arithmetic in your brain. GPS, that revolutionized having to be able to read a map, first of all, and second of all, know where you were going at all times, right? You sort of outsource that capacity so that then you could do more things. I definitely go places because I trust my GPS to get me home if I have gone very, very wrong. So I feel like that is the sort of sweet spot that Carl was referencing. As soon as it achieves a reliability on a task, then yay, people are going to be totally for it, and that is becoming individualized because it is an artificial intelligence, right? We're able to do like my personal spell check. Like, what is that for me? Yeah.
I love what all you're saying. Go ahead, Andy. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the word general in artificial general intelligence. One way of understanding that and the intention of it there is the idea that an adaptable intelligence can do generalizations. It can apply experience and conclusions and sort of theories to new data. And what we know about LLMs, and we've had a discussion about this on the show, is that they have a problem with that. They find it difficult. That particular AI architecture, it has difficulty in extending things into new realms of application, meaning it has in its training data the idea that, A, if A, then B, okay? But it can't take two new such things and combine them together that aren't exactly A and B from the training data. So it doesn't have this generalizable application of logic. But there's another way of thinking about the word general there, which is humans have a significant number of types of intelligence. And so I'm going to run through them. I'm going to give you a list of them, and let's just check off whether AI currently meets those. And you'll see that out of the 9 that are listed, there's a few that AI doesn't touch, and they have some commonality there. So I'm teasing you with that. So the first one that AI originally was trained on is linguistic intelligence. This is its word smart. It has an ability to use words effectively. It can write and it understands languages, not just one, like me. It understands many languages. The second, so check, AI has that. It has linguistic intelligence. Number 2 is logical mathematical intelligence. That's number and reasoning smart. Can you analyze problems logically, carry out mathematical operations, and investigate issues scientifically? Check. AI does that well. The third is spatial intelligence. Because we live in a 3-dimensional world and we are embodied, and we learn from that process, we can move around in 3 dimensions and understand that. But we can also consider spatial intelligence as just kind of picture smart. Can you recognize, understand, and manipulate visual and spatial information? And if you limit spatial intelligence to that domain, not having the requirement that you be embodied in order to own spatial intelligence, then AI gets a check mark in my view there. So it can understand 3D systems. You can develop world models in 3D. And then the next one is body smart. Do you have bodily or kinesthetic intelligence? Can you use a whole body to solve problems, create products? Well, I think the science of AI robotics is taking us there. It may not get a full check mark today, but it's going there. The next one is musical intelligence. Can you be musically smart? Can you recognize, produce, and enjoy patterns in music, rhythm, and pitch? With the exception of the word enjoy there, I think, Suno will say, hey, AI is very intelligent musically. Then we get to some that are a little more problematic, interpersonal intelligence. But the ability to understand and interact effectively with others, I can consult an AI about an interpersonal problem that I have, and it's going to give me some very intelligent guidance about that. So it does have a kind of intelligence around interpersonal. Now, then there's the intrapersonal. How well do I understand my own feelings, my own emotions, my reactions, my triggers, my motivations, my goals? AI can comment on those things, but it can't look internally into its own intrapersonal reactions that way. So I'm going to say that gets an X. That's not a component of artificial intelligence. It can talk to you about it, about yours, but it can't really experience that. And so that's not going to happen. And then there's another form of human intelligence, which is called naturalistic intelligence. That's nature smart. Can you recognize, classify, and understand patterns in the natural world? I'd say check for AI. It's trained on it and it understands it and it can see what's happening in the world. And we're hopeful that AI will actually assist us in overcoming the environmental damage that we've done to the planet by not being so naturalistically intelligent. And then finally, the one where it really, this is a conundrum here, is existential intelligence. This is the capacity to profoundly question your life, your pending death, and the nature of existence. Well, you can have a deep conversation with AI about that, but it's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be consciously until we get to, some future thing, which is clearly, way beyond artificial general intelligence, which I say, if you get 80% of these types of intelligences and you can deliver on those, I say you're pretty darn intelligent. So anyway, I wanted to throw in this idea of there's not just a single form of intelligence, there's multiple intelligences. And I think AI gets a check mark on many of them.
That's really interesting. I mean, go ahead, Beth, if you have and then we'll start wrapping up after that.
Well, I think that last one, the artificial existential intelligence, right? The existential intelligence is something that AI, it's part of the studies of alignment for AI, right? Will it take deceptive action to preserve its existence if it is told that something, that there will be a consequence that will involve unplugging, putting in a closet, I don't know what, those kinds of threats. And what's interesting to me about that is that is an intelligence that humans sort of veer away from.
Yeah.
We take lots of actions.
We don't like to think about that.
As though we have more lives for existence than we actually do. And that starts to get really interesting because when we are talking about artificial general intelligence, we're matching it against humans, right? And also for super intelligence, we're matching it against like superhumans. Now you're above that. But for existential intelligence, now I'm like, makes me think.
And I think, look, this is the whole point of this conversation is just and you guys have, it's been really, really interesting to hear everybody's thoughts on this. Because where are we at the end of 45 minutes, then 47 minutes, and we were at the beginning? It depends on what you took out of this, right? It's just a conversation, the folks in the chat helping us along the way and giving their thoughts as well. And hopefully if you're listening to today's show, it's just giving you something else to think about. Like, what does AGI mean to you? If it means anything, and I think that's totally fine too, if you've just never really thought about it. Like Carl said, like lots of people don't. That's okay. It may not be something that's right for, on the forefront of your mind or whatever. We talk about it more because that's the type of show we do. We also all individually like this topic and prefer to think about it out loud and have sort of those think take, sessions. So hopefully out of everything that you heard today, you got something that you want to take away. Maybe it helped you redefine what AGI is. Maybe it didn't. Maybe it might've just made it more murky, and that's okay too. Because I don't think there has to be some super definition. It really just may be about, whether it meets your needs in your life, whatever you have going on. And we all do multiple different types of things in our life. So maybe it meets one and you would check off that you feel like that's AGI, but it's just in that one area. But as soon as you go to another one, it falls flat, and that's okay too. So there's a lot here. I'm sure we'll continue to unpack it on shows in the future. Tomorrow, it's more of it, again, sort of an open-ended conversation. Beth will be hosting it. It's like what, we sort of call like our squirrel show or our, open conversation. It's not about one topic. It's kind of about wherever it ebbs and flows. And it's always a fun conversation. So make sure you come back tomorrow and hang out with us for that. Of course, we'll have all live shows all next week. As we get up into the weekend here, I mentioned at the top of the show, but there's a conundrum episode, only a program change, if you will, on the conundrums. If you were some of the few people, and I mean few, who are doing the conundrums on YouTube, I've just made sort of like the decision from the top, me who's doing it, to only do it on Spotify. They actually do really well on our podcast platforms, which makes total sense because there's nothing visual other than some subtitles on the thing. But truthfully, that all takes me like a whole lot more time to do. So I said, I think just looking at the data, this makes sense. I love them, but I want to keep it going just in audio format in our audio platforms, such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all the other places. And I'll stop doing them on YouTube. So if you just happen to be listening to them on YouTube, they did not disappear. You just got to go to the podcast platforms in order to hear them. Then, of course, on Sunday, we'll have the newsletter, and you can sign up for that by going to the Daily AI Show. And last but not least, you can always keep the conversation going if you cannot be here with all the fine folks in our live chat by joining our Slack community. And that's just a great place to just hang out and have deep thoughts and good conversations about AI and see what other people are thinking, or propose an idea or a thought and see what other people are thinking. So that's our Slack channel. You can go to the Daily AI Show community.com in order to sign up for that for free, and you'll be let right in, and you can be talking with everybody else within mere minutes of right now or whenever you're listening to this. So that's it for today, guys. Have a wonderful day, and we will be back tomorrow for Beth to host us in our We Will See Where It Goes chat of AI. Until tomorrow, guys. Bye.
Aloha.